Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, scholars and dignitaries, welcome to another episode. Welcome to my world. So, for those of you who are religious, you know the Ten Commandments. They were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, not for the Jews, but for all mankind. They are the moral imperatives, the guides to life, the guides to civilization, and the guides to eternal paradise in the kingdom of God. And the first commandment is, quote, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. This first commandment given by God specifically states that He and He alone is to be adored, and we are not to worship false gods and empty idols in His place. As Jesus said, we are to love God with our whole heart, our whole mind, and our whole soul. No other commandment is greater. So then the question becomes, are we putting other things before God? Have we split our loyalties, or even worse, fully abandoned God for the pleasures and worldliness of life? So only you know what you are focusing on in life. Is it God, or is it what the Bible calls mammon? Money, material goods, sex, power, prestige, comfort, success in your job, even fame. And of course, in today's world, the greater question, however, is to what extent do we replace God with alcohol and drugs? So, generally speaking, it's found that drug and alcohol use is highest in non-religious groups. It's also generally true that drug users are, or become, non-practitioners in traditional religions or religious practices. In one study of 1,178 current users of illicit drugs and 389 former users, it was found that attending religious services and the importance of religion were negatively associated with the use of alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and hallucinogens. People who do not have consistent religious practices are more likely to use drugs, but as important, people who use drugs are less likely to engage in or maintain consistent religious practices. In fact, many use drugs to a point of obsession, almost to the point of worshiping them in lieu of belief and practice of worship in God. The word idol usually conjures up images of figurines or statues of gods in a temple or on altars, with people bowing down to them and sacrificing their money or their goods to these gods. Many see this behavior as entirely inconceivable in today's modern society for any other purpose than a traditional religious practice, and yet millions of drug users place their trust and dependence, their faith and their hopes, their money and their goods in a drug. As well, often there is a ritual of use with drugs which parallels and even mimics customs of religious worship. Without realizing it, the objects of an addiction become the objects of worship, and that is called idolatry. Drugs, for millions, have become functional gods. In fact, many marijuana users will testify that they use drugs in part to seek a higher consciousness, a connection with a higher power. Yet this connection becomes self-centered, it's counterfeit, and lacks in total fulfillment and the expression of joy, especially when the effects of the drugs wear off and the realities and pain of the negative consequences set in. The commandment states, quote, thou shalt not have false idols. That is, you shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. People turn to idols because they are seeking something, some pleasure or comfort or connection apart from God. When trials and troubles come, when people experience emotional or physical pain, when they are lonely or bored, where do they turn for comfort and solace, for understanding, for satisfaction and joy? Drug users do not turn to God, but to the drug. Alcoholism and drug addiction are impacting families and communities around the world. Men and women are drinking and drugging themselves to death. The morbidity and mortality rates from alcoholism and drug abuse exceeds that of cancer, heart disease, and diabetes combined. Over the past decade, considerable research has emerged that demonstrates the benefits of religious practice within society. Religious practice is a protective factor against many of the negatives in life. Religious practice promotes the well being of individuals, families, and the community. Regular attendance at religious services is linked to healthy, stable family life, strong marriages, and well behaved children. The practice of religion also leads to a reduction in the incidence of domestic abuse, crime, substance abuse, and addiction. Religious practice also leads to an increase in physical and mental health, longevity, and education attainment. And religious practice leads to a higher quality of life and a higher satisfaction in life. The problem, however, is that drug use interrupts the awareness of, understanding of, and conscious practice of religion, faith, and worship in God. In its place, we find an overvaluing of a drug and too often an over reliance on that drug to the exclusion of everything else: family, friends, work, and yes, even God. At the very least, drug use and intoxication could be called gluttony, one of the seven deadly sins. But when it's drugs that the user venerates and depends upon to the level of the exclusion of God, perhaps it can even be called idolatry. Hey, be safe, be well, and instead of drugs, turn back to God, and may God bless.